Sandy has weakened just a bit north of the Bahamas. It's still a minimal hurricane with top winds at 75 miles an hour. It's moving to the north at 7, so it's moving slowly. Still on track, though, to move in over part of the mid-Atlantic coast near our area come late Monday night into early Tuesday, somewhere between Long Island and coastal Virginia. We're tracking the storm for you. We'll have the very latest coming up tonight at 5.
Rockefeller Center. This is News 4 New York.
Now at 5, tracking Sandy. The hurricane still about 2 days out from our area.
Dozens of deaths already reported in the Caribbean as the storm marches over the Bahamas on its way towards us.
And as Sandy rages on, officials are warning people don't panic, but be prepared. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sheba Russell.
I'm Tom Yamas. There's still a lot of uncertainty tonight about where exactly this storm will hit and when.
But what we do know for sure is that people up and down the East Coast are getting ready. Governor Cuomo has declared a state of emergency for all of New York State. And those who live near beaches like Long Beach on Long Island are filling bags after bags with sand, their only line of defense for big storms like Sandy.
Meanwhile, as Sandy continues to batter the Bahamas, 41 people are dead across the Caribbean. We
do have live team coverage tonight across the tri-state, but we begin with Storm Team 4 meteorologist Janice Huff. Janice, we are still waiting for the latest advisory to come out here, right?
Yes, we are. We're still waiting for it to come in from the National Hurricane Center, but the storm did weaken a bit earlier today, down to a Category 1, a minimal Category 1 storm with top winds at 75 miles an hour. Nonetheless, it's still creating quite a bit of wind down around parts of the Bahamas, even coastal sections of Florida still feeling the wind, and the high-level clouds on the northern edge of the storm now reaching Virginia already. So the storm itself is actually growing in size and width. It's getting a bit larger. Here's a closer view now. These bright white clouds indicate the strongest thunderstorms, the highest cloud tops that are mainly now north of the Bahamas, the Great Abaco. So they're not getting a lot of heavy rain there right now. Most of it is offshore and over the ocean. So this is the advisory that came in at 2. We're still waiting for the 5 o'clock. It's not quite in that. You could update at any moment. Top winds are at 75 miles an hour. The storm did slow down as it moved over the islands. It's moving north at 7 miles an hour. But just because it decreased in wind strength does not mean that we have to ease a bit in terms of how we're going to deal with the storm and get too comfortable. We can't get too comfortable. It's going to stay out over the ocean for quite some time. And as it does, it could still possibly regain a bit of strength. Now, I think this is the latest advisory in now. It appears that the storm will lose a bit more strength to tropical storm status as it continues north. That's for tomorrow afternoon. But look at what happens. It goes back up to Category 1. If it stays out over the ocean long enough, water's still relatively warm across this area, then it will re-strengthen. So by Sunday afternoon, it's still pretty far offshore. We're still expecting to start to feel the first effects late Sunday evening along coastal sections. Now, there's a broad area where the storm could make landfall, anywhere from the Connecticut coast all the way down to the Virginia coastline near the Outer Banks. So this entire area, most of the models are sort of zeroing in at this time towards the Jersey Shore, maybe towards Cape May or Delaware, will be then on the north side of the storm. Now, we'll show you these spaghetti tracks, and they are all over the place. These are all the different forecast models. You see how difficult it is for us to really pinpoint where this storm is going to be, but they take pretty much an average of all these lines. And most of these storm tracks now are concentrated between New York City and, say, the Maryland shoreline, near Ocean City. So anywhere within that region. And if we're on the north side of the storm, then we will expect to see some heavy rain, but maybe not initially a lot of heavy rain. That would come later, but definitely a lot of storm surge. And powerful winds aren't going anywhere, 50 to 70 miles an hour. So the coastal areas, we're talking about hurricane-force winds, widespread flooding, power outages, and coastal erosion. Now, Steve Villanueva has been hanging out too, and he's going to talk about the impacts depending on where you live. Steve?
Well, Janice, we're going to talk about the impacts region by region, and we're basing this on the fact that we think the storm system will make landfall at this point in time south of New York City. So we're going to break it down for you. For the city, Long Island, coastal Connecticut, anywhere from 6 to 10 inches of rain, 40 to 70 mile-per-hour wind gusts, which will topple trees and power lines, which could lead to widespread power outages. And along the shoreline, anywhere from moderate to severe coastal flooding. And again, we will see lots of power outages. Into the Hudson Valley and interior Connecticut, for you, you'll see flooding, but not coastal flooding because you're obviously away from the water. But with 4 to 6 inches of rain, maybe up to 10 inches of rain, all of that rain will start to go into the rivers and streams, and they will start to flood. So, of course, that's what we're going to have to watch over the next couple of days because they don't flood right away. That could take days. Even the storm system could be gone, and our local rivers and streams will continue to overflow their banks. Of course, we're going to watch this storm system. In the meantime, let's toss it back to Janice.
All right, thanks, Stephen. We will check on the other areas across the tri-state and let you know what you can expect and what the impact is going to be. That's coming up in just a few minutes. Back to you, Tom.
All right, Janice and Steve, thank you. We want to remind our viewers that we are still waiting for that 5 o'clock Hurricane Sandy advisory. As soon as that comes in, we will toss it back to Janice. Now, Mayor Bloomberg is urging all New York City residents to start taking precautions for Sandy's potential arrival. His teams are monitoring the storm around the clock, but he says it is still early right now to make a call on evacuations. News 4's Tracy Strahan has more on how the city is preparing. Tracy?
Well, Tom, no shutdowns just yet, but he did repeat the mantra we've come to expect from Mayor Bloomberg in situations like this. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Now, he did point out, as Janice and Steve have been pointing out, the possibility of coastal flooding and strong winds shutting down bus and subway service, even shutting down bridges. And because of all of that, he said he's not opposed to doing what it takes to move people to higher ground if need be. Take a listen.
Let me remind you that during Hurricane Irene, these areas were put under a mandatory evacuation order. And as of now, we're not going to require evacuation of these areas. But if that changes, we will make an announcement giving further details. And you should know that whether you live in those areas, this is done for your safety.
Now, one of those areas of particular interest right now, Zone A. You're taking a look at a map of Staten Island where Zone A is shaded in orange. Throughout the 5 boroughs, 375,000 residents are living in the zone where that low-lying areas are susceptible for coastal flooding. They also pointed out that 6 hospitals and 41 chronic care centers there have been ordered to cancel elective admissions this weekend. And when it comes to any patients, discharge those who are able to get out. Now, earlier today, we had a chance to go inside of Con Edison's command center, certainly up and running already. They have already called in extra crews, and they're monitoring their sea level equipment for any tidal surges, also their overhead equipment because of all of the strong winds that could come in as well. Now, they're monitoring not only their electricity, but gas and steam as well. They usually call in mutual aid from other states, but they are fully cognizant of the fact that up and down the eastern seaboard, utility crews are doing the same thing. So there is a little bit of competition for that right now. We're live at City Hall tonight. Tracy Strahan, News 4 New York.
All right, Tracy, thank you. Our team coverage continues on Long Island now, where command posts are set up and people have already begun prepping for Sandy. News 4 Long Island reporter Greg Sergel is live in Hauppauge. And Greg, you were there when the governor declared a state of emergency for all of New York State just a short time ago. Greg, can you just remind our viewers what that means?
Well, Shiva, basically, according to the governor, the declaration of a state of emergency mobilizes the National Guard. The governor doesn't know where they'll have to go or what they will have to do, but they are key to dealing with any emergencies that may crop up during the storm. As you said, the governor very concerned about Sandy, as are many others around Long Island. Suffolk County today activated its Emergency Operations Center in Yaphank. The county is considering opening storm shelters and is also mulling over whether to order the evacuation of Fire Island. In the town of Islip today, some workers spent the day filling sandbags and others were clearing storm drains. The goal there, of course, to try and keep street and home flooding to a minimum. But as Irene showed us last year, that won't be easy. Some West Islip homes that we visited today had a foot or more of water inside after Irene last year. And that's why homeowners in those communities have already begun moving their belongings and furniture to higher ground and putting sandbags in their driveways to try and stop the onslaught of the water. Governor Cuomo had a message for homeowners everywhere. Simply use common sense as you prepare to deal with this storm.
We want to make sure we're ready just in case. Again, there is no reason to panic. We have a lot of time and we're prepared for any eventuality. But again, we'd rather err on the side of caution than not, and that's what we're doing.
Now, as for the Long Island Power Authority, officials told me it's all hands on deck for its crews, but an official specified that this storm could knock out power for several days. Of course, after Irene, some Long Islanders lost power for a week. Governor Cuomo did put LIPA on notice today. He said a Public Service Commission official will be monitoring how LIPA handles this storm. That's something a lot of Long Islanders have been calling for after what happened just last year. We're live in Hop Hog tonight. Greg Sergel, News 4 New York. Back to you guys.
Greg, thank you. Let's head now to Westchester County, which saw serious flooding, highway closures, and power outages with Tropical Storm Irene. Our coverage continues with News 4's Mark Santia. He's live in Mamaroneck tonight, a town that has a lot of residents in low-lying and flood-prone areas. Mark?
And Tom, you said it perfectly. A lot of hills here in Westchester, which means there's a lot of low-lying areas. So the main concern, not the wind, but the rain and flooding.
Taking all precautions. The bottom line is you cannot be over-prepared. You're better off being over-prepared and then say you didn't have to do it.
Here in the village of Mamaroneck, like other spots in Westchester County, officials are wasting no time making preparations for Sandy.
We want everybody to be ready and calm and be prepared to take care of themselves as best as possible.
There were evacuations last year when Hurricane Irene hit, and this year officials say they will make that call if necessary as Sandy gets closer to New York. But when the rain starts falling, the fire chief has this urgent warning for everyone.
It's better to turn on NBC and watch it on the news than go out there and see it firsthand. You don't know what's in that roadway. You don't even know what's in that water. So the best thing we can ask people to do, especially with power lines being down, stay home.
Do you ride the rails to and from the city? If you do, you want to stay with News 4 New York. Coming up at 6, what Metro North is doing to prepare for Sandy. Reporting live in Mamaroneck, I'm Mark Santia, News 4 New York.
We're going to take you to New Jersey now, where Governor Christie has not yet declared a state of emergency, but that could come as early as tomorrow. News 4 New Jersey reporter Brian Thompson is live at Point Pleasant Beach. And Brian, I understand you have some new information regarding another community under a voluntary evacuation order.
That's absolutely correct. While the governor has not said anything yet, certainly the scramble is on and down on LBI. They just announced within the past hour or so a voluntary evacuation for that entire strand of island, Barrier Island. Also earlier today, the Barrier Islands off Cape May were also given a voluntary evacuation notice. There are a lot of concerns all up and down this shore. You can see this building behind me here at Jenkinson's Boardwalk in Point Pleasant Beach sticks out into the sand toward the ocean. A whole bunch of issues depending on the community you go to. Earlier today we spent a lot of time in Belmar. Generators are humming in Belmar to try to empty these lakes to save low-lying neighborhoods by pumping the water over Ocean Avenue and into the ocean itself. Lake Como has flooded several times in the past.
It's aggravating. It's just aggravating, but in the summertime it's worth it.
Ann McCormick has seen those floods. Now she's worried about her two twins, Johnny and Chelsea, just 3 months old. They're not staying.
I may have to move the babies to my mother's.
Belmar knows storms. DPW was picking up anything that might wash away. Plenty of sand fencing already lines the beach. More is to come.
To keep the sand as much as possible on the beach as opposed to being blown all over Ocean Avenue.
Then there's the fishing pier. The Belmar Fishing Club dates back more than a century. The pier itself used to be maybe twice as long, but too many storms have left it a ghost of its former self, if you will. Can it withstand Sandy?
What we're thinking could happen on this one, we're very concerned. It could be very serious.
If they have to go out here, and this part of the pier has lasted this long, they'll go out with a bang, or a hurricane party anyway, and it starts Sunday at noon.
We'll make it till Sunday night, I'm sure. Maybe Monday morning.
If that sounds like a hurricane party not to be missed, the Belmar Fishing Club is members only. Now, if anything worries officials, it's attitudes like that of people who are going to come down to the beach or party down at the beach as this storm approaches. Remember Governor Christie last year, right before Irene, when he uttered those famous words, "Get the bleep off the beach"? Well, as I say, we haven't heard from Governor Christie yet, but you can just imagine what he's thinking right now. Live in Point Pleasant Beach, I'm Brian Thompson, News 4 New York. Back to you.
How could we forget that, Brian? Thank you. And in Connecticut, armies of utility crews are already pouring into the state as a preemptive strike against this storm. Here's Connecticut Governor Malloy.
Connecticut residents are resilient and understanding. They know that when a major storm hits, there is every likelihood that there will be some significant problems, including but not limited to the loss of power, flooding, and transportation issues. That's simply what happens when Mother Nature decides to strike.
And the governor will be meeting with municipalities tomorrow and Sunday. The Emergency Operations Center will open tomorrow morning at 8, and anyone needing any information on shelter should call 211. And you can keep your eye on Sandy throughout the next few days by tracking the radar on our website, NBCNewYork.com. You can also download our weather app on your smartphone and track it right from there. And coming up in just a few minutes, we'll have a live report from Florida. Well, people